Hi there, and welcome to the first video in the custom actions section. So in this video we're going to introduce where we can create actions using Lightning forms with inside the new form, the edit form and the display form. So we are currently in the new form ASPX, we're in our design experience, and we can start to obviously consider the type of actions that we might want to have on the command bar, on the form load, and also as floating buttons on the form. So let's just point out how we can access these. So on the actions menu at the top, notice that we've got the command bar. This is where you can create your own command bar buttons, or you can modify the existing ones, and we'll get into that in just a moment. We'll give a short example of each. We could also get into the form load actions. So here we've got the pre-form load and we've got the after form load, and here's an after form load that we've already done. That was the redirected tab to take us to the requester tab. And notice also in here we may have a button that is perhaps local to some of the controls that it's going to perform. So notice in here we can come down using the add button and select a button with actions as well. So that will actually drop a button on our form. We can make that the primary button or not, and we can configure the actions there. Okay, so there's just a few places where we can create actions, and we'll go through and like I say, create one of each. So under the actions menu at the very top, we're going to go to the command bar first of all, and notice how we've got the save and the cancel buttons on here. Now again, just a point, there's some action buttons that wouldn't make sense to be on the new form. So things like approve buttons, that's more likely to be on the display form or the edit form. And sometimes updating the status can also be an issue as well, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. So with this purchase order, notice how we've got the standard save and cancel button. So the save is just going to save. So notice here we can actually go through and view. Notice we can go through and view the actions that are behind the standard button. So there's the save form and the close form. And if we have a look at the cancel and configure the actions there, that is just simply a close form. So we might want these to do a little bit more. Now consider what might happen as you're creating a purchase order. We're filling it out, but we've not yet finished. We get called out to go into a meeting or something like that. So we don't want to discard it. We also don't want to submit it for it to be approved. So what I'm going to do here is change my save. We'll go to configure actions, we'll go to edit, and under edit I'm going to change save to save draft. And under the configure actions, I'm also going to track the fact that I've done that. So I'm going to choose the set field value action and drag that in between the save form and the close form. So the form field that I'm going to change is status, and I'm going to change its value to draft. Now this is a good example of something you want to be careful with if you were to design your new form and export your new form with all the buttons, because if you imported this into the edit form and somebody was to click the save draft button, then of course it may actually change a purchase order from approved to draft. So we need to be cautious of that. So once we've set that field value, the next thing that we want to do is save the fact that that value has also been set, so we can drag another save before this closes. So that's a real sort of straightforward series of actions, and we can also make those conditional as well, and we'll get more into that in just a moment. But that's a simple modification of the command bar button that we have, the save button, using the action builder. So we'll OK that. That's the save draft, and next to it I'm going to add a new action. So this is actually going to be called submit purchase order. So this is where it gets submitted for approval. And we could say that if we want submit for approval. In fact, might be even better. So submit for approval. Okay, so we can choose an icon for our button. So let's go through and select an icon. So this is just like what we did with the tabs. And if you think of the type of thing that we might want to do as part of a submission, send comes to mind. So if I start to type the word send, notice there's a few things that might do. So here we've got a send icon. Now we can decide when this button should be visible and when it should be enabled for people to click as well. So we could argue, well, that's always going to be the case on the new form, but maybe we don't want to do that on the edit form. When we come down to the configure actions, again, this is where we've got the series of actions that we can choose from. So there's conditions, there's loops, we have the ability to close the form, we have the ability to execute some JavaScript, and that's up to you to build some JavaScript. We've got some great examples. You can redirect a tab, which is something we've already used inside the form load actions. There's a save form, there's a set field value that we just used, so that allows us to set things like the status or set the approval. There's a send HTTP request, which is really powerful for calling things like a flow inside of Power Automate. We have an open form, so that could be a form in another list. So if you imagine that we're creating this purchase order, we realize that we haven't yet set the supplier up, that we could have a add supplier button. We've got also an open web page. There's a reload of the form, and then we have a send email. And there's also a send internal email. Now this is here for backwards compatibility. Really you should be using the send email, and we'll talk more about that send email action in a moment. There's a show message which gives useful information back to the person that is submitting this purchase order. We can tell them that they've done that successfully rather than just click a button and see nothing happen. There's also an add list item, so we can create a list item in another list somewhere. There's a copy document, so that's going to copy it from document library to document library. We also have a create new folder, a delete item, a get items, so we can go and build a query as to what items to get. We have a move document as well as the copy document, a start workflow, which is a SharePoint workflow, not a Power Apps flow. We have an update item. We also have an upload document. And then there's a premium action as well, which is a generate document that will generate a Word document for us based on the placeholders inside the form. And finally, there's also a set variable where you can choose a variable value throughout the series of actions. So let's have a look at the sort of thing that we might want to do. The first thing I want to do, if I'm clicking on this submit button, we've got to think of the type of things that the users might do, and that is they might click the button twice. They might also click the button when it's already been submitted. So imagine you're the approver, you've already got this on your to-do list to approve, and then you get another approval request for the same form. So what we might want to do is add a condition first of all in this to check whether that status field is equal to pending or not. So in here I can add a condition that says status is equal to pending, just like what we did in the styling. So once we OK that, if the status is equal to pending, if it is pending, then we're going to resort into this yes section. If it's not pending, it's going to go into the no section. So if it is pending, then that means we've already clicked the button. So what we're going to do there is just send a message or show a message to the user that is a little status message, and that status message is going to be of a warning type, and we can have that show for 5 seconds or thereabouts, and we'll just say warning as my subject or title, and in here we're just going to have this purchase order has already been submitted. We have saved your purchase order. Okay, so there's our message should that already be pending. So if it's not already set to pending, then we want to submit it. So what we might want to do first of all is ensure that the form is saved. That means that any values that we've updated have been committed to a SharePoint list item. And then we might want to set a field value. So we're going to set the field value of status to the value of pending. Okay, so there's our set field value already set. And of course you might have other fields that you want to add to that as well, such as when it was submitted and that type of thing, which of course you could also do. I'm also going to send an email in here, so we'll add that send email action. And when we're composing the send email action, one of the things we can do is first of all set who this email is coming from. And in this case, that email is coming from the user who is currently logged in. So I know we've not really gotten into the expression builder just yet, but just to show you that inside the expression builder, under the context objects, we can get to the user, and under the user we can get to the email. So that's the email address of the current user is set inside that from field. Who we're going to send it to, I'm going to hard code an email address in here, which is demo@lightningtools.product.demo.onmicrosoft.com. Rolls off the tongue. And of course we could CC people, we could BCC people, and so on as well. And we can also set a reply to address optionally. So once we've done all of that, we've then got a subject. So we'll have a new purchase order request. And then inside the body, we could put dear sir, or whatever we want to put, please approve my new purchase order request. And in there we've got the ability to create hyperlinks that may go to the list or go to the item and so on. It could go to a view inside your list where there's a list of purchase orders waiting to be requested or approved. So here it says, yeah, dear sir, please approve my purchase order request, and we could maybe add in here using the expression builder some other fields. So these are all the fields on the form that we could add to that message to maybe include the purchase order number or something to that effect. And of course you've got all of your styling and everything as well. So if you wanted to highlight certain words in certain colors or whatever you want to do, you can apply that. There's also a fallback email address. There's attachments, and I'll show you how we can work with those attachments in the next video. We can also show this message before it's sent, and we can save it to the sent items. And by the way, if you show it before it's sent, then you are giving the user the option to customize that message as well. Okay, so that's the send email. So we've set this to pending. We've sent an email. We may also want to again show a message, so I could do that, and this time, as opposed to being a warning message, this will be a success message. So we could type in the words success. That's always nice to see. And then inside the text we can have your purchase order has been submitted for approval. Okay, so we can type the message that we want in there, and since we set a form field value here as well, what I'm going to do is just drop in another save form. Let's just put that inside that condition. There we go. So we've got our save form in here, and then we'll do another close form. Okay, so really straightforward. There is a warning that has just popped up to make sure that the close form is the last thing that takes place. In fact, we could do that outside. So it happens regardless as to whether this was a yes or a no, depending if that makes sense. All right, and notice that you can import or export your actions as well. So if you wanted to export this so you could use it again as a sort of standard type button that you might create, you can do that. So I'm going to click on OK, and we've now got our submit for approval button. We'll choose OK again, and there it is. So it would make sense for this to appear next to save draft. So what I can also do is just move that up, and you can also make them sublinks and things as well if you want to. So you can just go through and choose make sublink, and that way you get a sort of fly out menu, which is useful. So that's a quick intro to action buttons, and you can see that that's appeared on the action bar there for the form itself. If we did want to drop one onto the form, like say to set something like who this was approved by, that would be a very useful thing to do. So what I'm going to do here is just go through and add a button. And once more, it wouldn't really make sense to be on this form, but I've started, so I'll finish. So in here, we could just have approve. Now, this is not going to be the primary button. That means that if I was to just sort of press enter, we don't want it to just fire behind this button. When we configure the actions behind the button, what we could do is save the form, set the field value, save the form, close the form again. And the field value that we're going to set is the status again to approved. Okay, so we can do that. We could then send another email, just as you've seen, to the requester to let them know that their purchase order has been approved. That could be another step that we do using that send email action. And we could also use another set field value to set the approval date. So in fact also the approved by. So the approved by would be the current user that actually clicked the button. So behind here we can go to the user, double click on the email address if we want that, or the title of that user. So that's who it is approved. So we've got our save form, we've set the status to approved, we've set the field value of who approved it, and then we've saved the form, and then we've closed the form. So these are things that you could do as a floating action button. So if I just OK that and OK again, there's our approve button that you can click when you're right next to this status field and approved by. The only other thing I'm going to change on that one, you don't want people to be able to approve their own purchase requests. So, so what we can also do is go into the configure expressions on this one and choose when it's visible or when it's enabled. So I'm going to set the enabled and come down here to the context objects and against the user, and we'll check if the user is a member of a group, and the group is going to be called PO approvers, which doesn't actually exist at the moment, so that would appear disabled for me. Okay, so we can OK that, and then that button, you can't click it unless you're a member of that group. Okay, so that is a floating button. If we just go to our form load buttons, there's the example here. We'll do a more advanced example later on in a different video in this section, but yeah, you can see the redirector tab. So that one was just allowing me to select the requester tab as the form is loaded. Okay, so there's some examples of using actions, and we'll get more in depth with those as we go through the videos. I hope you found this useful. Many thanks.